In this video, I'm going to give you everything you need to learn how to photograph and see the northern lights. Look at that, guys. What the heck? This is epic. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Kris Luckenbach. I'm a photographer here in beautiful Kodiak, Alaska, and it's evident you guys came here to learn how to see the northern lights. And in this video, we're going to discuss recommended camera gear and settings, locations and time of the year, space data, and overall weather to give you the best chance to see the northern lights wherever your location may be. First up, we're going to discuss camera gear and settings. If you're not a photographer, don't worry, a modern day smartphone is going to capture the northern lights just fine. It's not going to be as sharp as something like this, a real camera, but a smartphone really does a good job photographing everything you need for the aurora, to see it, share it with your friends and whatnot. Okay, so first up, let's discuss using a real camera. I recommend a modern day mirrorless camera or a DSLR, something that is capable of shooting live view with a simulated exposure. That way at nighttime, it's easy for you to focus on the stars. I have the Canon R5 and the R6, and this does a great job getting that done for me. Here's a list of a bunch of cameras that I would recommend in 2023 for photographing the aurora borealis. But overall, just make sure that your camera can go into manual mode where you can adjust the aperture, shutter speed, and the ISO. What lens do you need for capturing the aurora? Well, you're gonna want a wide and a fast aperture lens. So I recommend anything between 14 millimeters and 24 millimeters, and no higher than 2.8 aperture. So f2.8, f2, f1.8, f1.4 work really good. I have the Sigma 20 millimeter f1.4, which is my favorite lens, and this one here that is on this camera is the Canon RF 15-35 f2.8. They're gonna get great shots, but lenses with f4 and higher are not gonna do much for you unless you raise your ISO to a tremendous amount. Here's a list of a bunch of lenses I recommend for aurora borealis photography. And I think now's a good time to jump in here. If you don't own one of these lenses and you want to try one out, check out lensrentals.com. Use my code KRIS15. There's a link in the description for 15% off lensrentals.com. And they are awesome. They'll send you any lens you need on their website, and you just ship it back with a return label, and it's pretty seamless. So you're gonna need a tripod and your camera to do aurora photography. I know, who would have thought, right? But in all seriousness, a lot of people don't know that. You really do need a tripod, and make sure you also have a headlamp, because setting up your tripod at night can be a little risky. There's been times where I've set up my tripod without a headlamp. I thought the camera clicked into the tripod. I let go of the camera and it fell right off the tripod. So having a headlamp really gives you some light to see and confirm what you're doing. If you're gonna use a headlamp, ask other photographers around you if there are any. Can I use my headlamp? Because you don't want to ruin their photos if they're taking a nice shot or whatever they're doing. Just be courteous as a photographer and make sure your headlights are off also, and your headlamp is only on when other people give you permission. So there's been times where I just had to sit there and hope that my shot was good because someone was doing a time lapse, and I didn't want to be that guy that ruined their time lapse. Now that the camera is on the tripod, and what we're gonna do is just point the camera towards the night sky. And what I'd like to do from here is put my ISO pretty high, like 10,000 or something like that, my aperture as low as it can go, and my shutter speed somewhere 5-10 seconds. Something that will bring up the stars on the live view exposure. That's why I really recommend a modern day camera, because when you can see the stars on the back of the LCD screen, it makes focusing so much easier. It's actually unbelievable. And the next step is very important. You're gonna wanna turn off autofocus, and if your lens has image stabilization, turn them off. They will ruin your photo. So now that we're in manual focus and image stabilization is off, let's get the camera on and we're gonna get this thing focused on the night sky. What I like to do is I'll get real close to my screen and make sure I can see some stars and whatnot. Right now in the back of my camera, I can see some aurora and some stars, and I could tell that they're almost focused. What I'm gonna do is zoom in onto the night sky and find some stars. And what I'm gonna do is move my focus until the stars are at their sharpest. And I like to go back and forth. Okay, out of focus, in focus, out of focus. All right, in focus must be right around here. I think this looks pretty good. We're gonna take a test shot and we're just gonna shoot and see if it comes out pretty good. I think it looks pretty sharp. I did it a little earlier and there was some atmospheric haze in the sky. So what that could do is give you the illusion that the stars aren't sharp, but the issue there is the sky is in focus, but there's just a little bit of blur in between you and the sky in that atmospheric haze. But now it looks pretty good, and well, you just took your first test shot for the Northern Lights. All right, so I'm looking at the back of my screen. It looks well exposed, a little off. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna increase the shutter speed a little bit and leave the ISO at 2500. Let's try that. That looks a lot better. I think it looks perfectly exposed for a Northern Lights shot, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that works in this scenario right now. Guys, I gotta tell you something. There's no such thing as perfect settings. Don't ask me for perfect settings. I'm gonna give you a starting point. Start at 5 seconds, 2500 ISO, and whatever your aperture can do. f1.4, f2.8. If you shoot at 5 seconds with 2500 ISO, your photo's either gonna be super bright, well exposed, or underexposed. Here's how to fix it. If the aurora looks super good to the naked eye, it's dancing, it's moving fast, it's got real sharp, rigid detail in the aurora, well, what you want to do is increase your shutter speed. And with increasing your shutter speed from 5 to maybe 2 seconds, you're going to capture more detail and it's going to show a little bit sharper in those spikes and whatever it's doing. Picket fence like material. That's why I like 2 seconds. Sometimes if it's moving really fast, I do half a second. If you took your test shot and it's a little underexposed, it looks a little dark on the back of your camera, well, you might want to just increase your shutter speed. Chances are the aurora may be not doing anything too much. So you saw me raise it to 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 13 seconds, that works. The less the aurora is doing, the longer you can have your shutter speed, the lower you can have your ISO. ISO will just introduce noise into your image. I think with modern day cameras, I shoot 6400 at nighttime, no problem. Even with Lightroom now, with the new AI denoise, you can shoot 10, 12,000 ISO and it works really, really good. So that's something to consider as well. Moving on to where to go. If you're in the United States, the best place to go would be Fairbanks, Alaska. If you live in Canada, the best places to go in Canada are Yellowknife and Churchill, Manitoba. If you live in Europe, the best places to go would be Tromsø, Norway, Lapland, Finland. Iceland is really popular, but they are notorious for having the worst weather, so you may go for a week and see nothing. If you're gonna go on a trip, I think you have your best bet at 10 days. So if you go plus or minus 2 or 3 days from there, I think that works. But 10 days, I think, gives you the best chance to get your most amount of aurora viewing in. You know, since I live in Alaska, I'm gonna speak mainly on the United States and Canada's behalf. I know them a little bit better. I don't know Europe as much. So if you live in the lower 48, well, good news. You don't actually have to go up to Alaska to see the aurora. You can head to places like North Dakota or northern Minnesota. Anywhere in those northern states, they get a somewhat good chance of seeing the northern lights when there is a huge solar storm. And I'm gonna get into space data a little bit later, give you some ideas on how to increase your chances of finding the next big solar storm, but that's gonna be a little bit later in the video. Just so you guys know, you can head up to the northern United States without going through Canada. If you live in Canada, honestly, you can go anywhere that's clear and dark. You're gonna wanna look for a light pollution map. Maybe if you are also in North Dakota or whatnot, make sure you find a light pollution map. Go to a place that's away from city lights. You're gonna want clear and dark skies. Okay, well, that's where to go. Let's talk about when to go. If you live in Alaska, chances are you're gonna hear April 15th to August 15th and no in between. Well, I'm going to tell you April 15th to August 15th, plus or minus 2 weeks. The skies are just becoming dark enough or too bright to capture the northern lights again. So I definitely recommend in between April 15th and August 15th, just for the chances of the most amount of dark skies. You might get 30-40 minutes after August 15th, or before August 15th or after April 15th. I've seen the aurora early May, but it's only lasted a few minutes in the night sky. If you go to a place like Banff or North Dakota or Minnesota, well, you can see the aurora year round. That is pretty awesome because I get a little jealous. Sometimes in July there's a huge solar storm and I see some cool shots in Banff or North Dakota and I get a little bit jealous of them. I've even seen shots as far south as Death Valley National Park this past year. So now is really the time to go. The next couple years, the sun is in solar maximum, giving you the most amount of chances to see bigger storms hit the earth from CMEs coming off of the sun. When you get to your location, you're gonna ask, what time should I go out? Well, here's a general answer, but it's the truth. I can't give you a specific time because it changes. It just depends on whatever the sun and earth wants to do for you. Sunset to sunrise, that's basically it. It can happen right after sunset, right before sunrise, or anywhere in between. I've seen the aurora 20 minutes before the sun comes up in Fairbanks. Awesome, awesome show. But I've also seen it come out at 3 o'clock in the morning with no chance, no signs at all up until 3 o'clock in the morning. So if you give up at 2:30, you might say, well, the northern lights are coming out tonight. If you just stayed up 30 minutes longer, you could have got them. That's the trouble with photographing the aurora. If you're gonna go on an aurora trip, I would recommend cutting out your daytime activities, sleeping throughout the day, and just planning on being up all night because the aurora is your bucket list after all. So why don't you just make sure you get every chance you can give yourself. Places like Fairbanks, Alaska, you don't really need solar data. General rule of thumb is if it's clear, go out. All right, well, I've said enough about solar data. Let's get into what solar data is. If you go on any website to look for Northern Lights data, you're gonna see a few things on there that you're probably wondering what they are. So, first up, you'll see KP index. Basically, this is your general idea of aurora activity. The easiest way to read it is 1 is low activity, or 0 is really low activity. KP9 is holy smokes, that is the craziest thing to ever see. So that's the KP index. It's basically your general forecast. Another thing with KP index, if you're seeing, let's say it says you're currently in a KP5. Well, basically what that means is over the past 3 hours of data, it stayed consistent enough for KP5. So if you're just getting a notification on your phone that says, hey, it's KP5, you might want to go outside and look. Well, chances are that part of the storm's almost over and you might have missed it. So that's basically how you define KP index. I'm not a big fan of it because it's very misleading to a lot of people. My favorite thing to look at is typically the next number you'll see, and that is the BZ. The BZ can go plus or minus, in the negative or in the positive. The more negative the BZ number is, the better the chances you have of seeing the aurora. And what I like to think of the BZ is like a light switch, like a literal light switch. The lower the BZ number, like -10, the more chances you have of something really clicking in the sky for you to see. I don't use any apps. I only go to spaceweather.com. That's my favorite website to do. Ever since I solely relied on spaceweather.com, I've really gotten way luckier with seeing the aurora borealis, just because those apps can cause false hope. I'll look at the BZ, and if it says -9, -6, -5 here in Kodiak, Alaska, or if you're in North Dakota, it's not a bad chance to look for the northern lights. If you see it say -15, -10, -12, you really need to go out and chase the aurora. The BZ to me is also the most live, up-to-date data you can get. So if it's -10 BZ, chances are it might be going off right now or shortly within a few minutes. Just to cover up the BZ, negative is good. There's a few other ones. Solar wind speed, that's somewhat important. Average solar wind speed is between 300 and 400, not doing much. If you see it in the 5, 6, 700s, even 800s, chances are we're in a solar storm and the BZ has a chance to go real negative. And if it does and all that clicks, we're gonna get some really, really awesome shows. And also you'll see density in there. Density is something that is kind of like how thick you'll see the aurora. This is not like the only way that the aurora is gonna be greener to the naked eye or redder to the naked eye. Basically, the density just gives you a better chance, paired with the other numbers, to see nice, more intense aurora. What's a good night look like? Well, your data is gonna look somewhere like 700 solar wind speed, minus 12 BZ, 45 density. That is just an absolute crazy night. If you see that, you need to go out and check. If it's poor space weather data, you might see like 300 wind speed, plus 7 BZ, 4 density, you know, it's just gonna look really low. And another thing I really like about spaceweather.com is they have an aurora oval, and it's not completely accurate, don't get me wrong, but if the aurora activity is really, really good, you'll see the aurora oval reach lower down into lower Alaska, lower Canada, lower 48. So basically it's pretty common sense to understand if you're in North Dakota and the green oval is on top of you, well, you might have a good chance of seeing it. It's just a simpler way to understand the aurora data because it really is confusing. All of it has to intertwine with each other to work. One thing can't just be the only reason you see the aurora. I've seen 900 solar wind speeds with no aurora at all, so it doesn't mean much. Maybe it was like 800 something. And I've seen negative 30 BZ with no aurora at all. So it's truly, truly something that needs to click together. The more intense one number is, the bigger the chance you have of seeing the aurora. You've convinced yourself that you're gonna get a good aurora tonight, and you walk outside and it's cloudy, so you go back inside and go to bed. No, don't do that. There are some really accurate ways to see the cloud coverage in your area, and you might only have to drive 30, 40 minutes away from where you're at to escape the clear skies. Last year up in Fairbanks, I had to drive 1 to 3 hours every night to find some clear skies, but it worked. And here's how I did it. I basically used 2 apps or 2 websites, Astropheric and Windy. And basically what you wanna do is just go to first to astropheric.com and just search your location and then get the forecast. You're gonna see cloud coverage, and what I like about Astropheric is the bluer those little squares are on the bottom, that indicates clear skies, but it will also give you a little radar map and a future radar map. I think it's the most accurate up to 8 hours away, but sometimes it's pretty accurate 3 or 4 days away. Then I will go to windy.com and I'll search under the cloud forecast, my own area, and I just want to confirm that that date and time that Astropheric said it's going to be clear is going to be clear. Like tonight in Kodiak, Alaska, it said that it was clear on Astropheric and windy, and little do you know, it's exactly what happens. It clears up after sunset, and we're seeing the aurora right now. So yeah, don't get discouraged if it's cloudy where you're at right now, because a lot of times you might only have to drive a little bit. Sometimes you might just get skunked, and you might not ever see a clear sky on your whole aurora trip. It happens to the best of us, and just one of those things you gotta just suck up and say, maybe next time. And you know, my first time visiting Alaska, I didn't see the aurora the whole time. I went out every night, and you know, when I saw the aurora on the flight home, I saw it somewhere over Canada. I was heading back to Chicago and then to Philly. All right, well, that brings me to the next thing, things to consider when seeing the aurora. First of all, like we were just talking about, the plane ride. If you're flying into Alaska at nighttime, well, you want to sit on the right side of the plane. That gives you the best chance of viewing north and seeing the aurora. If you're leaving Alaska, sit on the left side of the plane. That will also give you a north view, and that gives you a chance of seeing the aurora as well. But to me, the most important thing to consider when you're visiting anywhere new is look at their weather, look at their websites, their tourism websites. Learn how to drive on their roads. It might be icy, it might be snowy. Up in Fairbanks, there's moose, and those moose sit in the road, and if you hit them at 50 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, those legs are as high as your windshield. What happens is, if you hit them, the body will collapse on the windshield and will kill you. So it's just really something to understand and take serious. If you've never driven on icy roads, really watch some videos, be safe, do what you are only capable of doing, don't overdo anything. Check Facebook groups, local tourism websites, just try to talk to anybody you can up local just to get their opinion on what it is like up there. Speaking of Facebook groups, I highly recommend joining Aurora Borealis notifications group on Facebook. Basically what it is around the entire world, people post Northern Lights photos. And that's not just, oh, I took this photo 7 years ago. It's live data, live information. People are saying, hey, I just saw the aurora 5 minutes ago here in Kodiak, Alaska. Hey, I'm in Kodiak, Alaska. Let me head outside and hopefully I can see something. So it gives you a chance. You'd be surprised how many people are in your area that you're at, North Dakota, Northern Ontario, anywhere you can think of. I've seen it posted on that group. There's been times though where I'm the only one that said, hey, I saw the aurora tonight. The only place it was clear, I guess, in the whole United States was here in Kodiak. So that does happen too sometimes. You yourself are your best indicator of seeing the aurora. You know, the next thing to consider is what I'm dealing with right now. I actually have gloves in the side-by-side, but I'm not wearing them right now just because they were kind of a pain to mess with the camera. But dress appropriately. You really want to learn how to dress for extreme colds. It's lethal. They can kill you. -20, -40 degree temperatures up in Fairbanks, Alaska. It is no joke. It is very cold. Frostbite. Your lungs can freeze. You really want to do some research on how to dress appropriately. But don't worry, at the end of this video, I'm going to link you guys that video on how I dress and pack for the aurora up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Turn off your headlamp, turn off the light that I'm using to record this because it's blinding me right now. Turn off your headlights on your car. You really want at least 5 to 10 minutes for your eyes to acclimate to the darkness, and that's gonna give you a good chance of seeing it and not ruin people's photos. Don't be that guy that ruins people's aurora photos. I've had it happen to me. I've been doing time lapses, and I've had 2 vans of tourism people get out of their van and jump in front of my camera with selfies, taking photos of the aurora. I couldn't believe it. I have that video up here too. It was a loss of words. I was just like, wow, this is really happening right now. And then also escape the city lights, look up some light pollution maps. I'll leave a link in the description of some light pollution that you could check out around your area to find the darkest place in your area. If this video is a little too much for your brain to comprehend, I know it's a lot of information, consider signing up for one of my aurora workshops. I'll be hosting one March 15th to March 20th up in Fairbanks, Alaska. That way, I'll give you all the help you need when capturing the Northern Lights, help you set up your camera. I'll make sure you're dressed appropriately. I'll be the one driving you, so you don't have to worry about driving on icy roads. I'll take care of it all, lodging, food, and all that. That is something to consider signing up for one of my workshops. There are also a bunch of aurora tours up in Fairbanks or anywhere within the Aurora Oval. There's a lot of private and professional companies giving you tours. So make sure you check online for those. Anyway, guys, I hope this video helps you capture your first ever Northern Lights or maybe get some better photos. I hope that you learned a little bit about the aurora and the potentials of aurora chasing. It can be dangerous. There's no doubt about it. And I hope that I inspired you to also go live out your dream. I've been chasing my dream for the past 6 years here in Alaska, and I love every minute of it. Totally worth dropping everything on the East Coast to move up here to Alaska. If you want to learn how to dress appropriately, everything you need for Northern Lights photography, heading up to Northern Fairbanks, Alaska, or anywhere in the Arctic, you're going to want to watch this video right here. It's going to give you everything you need to dress and bring for aurora viewing. If you want a little preview of what you're about to see and witness, click this video here, 9 days in Fairbanks, Alaska. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And with that, I'll leave you. Goodbye.